Good afternoon, class. This is Professor Ed Lyon, and welcome to TaxCoach University. Today's presentation, TCU, How to Prepare a Tax Plan. In the interest of full disclosure, I should probably let you know that TaxCoach University is not actually an accredited university, and I'm not a real professor. But it's fun to call myself a professor, even if my kids laugh at me when I do it. So I'm going to keep doing it through this series of calls. As the name implies, TCU 102 is the second in our series of classes designed to help make the light bulb go on over your head. And we welcome you to review all of the TaxCoach University classes in the TaxCoach University section of the TaxCoach website. You will see when you first log into the TaxCoach system that the home page is divided into two sections. On the left-hand side in blue, there are the planner resources. These do include the TaxCoach University section that I just mentioned. You can click the link. You'll have access to all of the TCU classes, plus a dozen or so expanded topic presentations, things like 7 Secrets to Year-Round Revenue, 7 Secrets to Charging Premium Fees, various outside the box presentations on specific tax planning strategies and marketing strategies. If you have not yet had the chance to go through the TaxCoach website, the first place I'm going to direct your attention is the Success Secrets section under the Marketing Your Services. Success Secrets is where you'll learn about TaxCoach's philosophy of lucror vestri dignitas, charge what you're worth. You'll learn about the TaxCoach method, see the briefs archives, have access to some terrific presentations on marketing and selling your services, and really get a good taste of what TaxCoach can do for your practice. You'll see on the right-hand side is the software itself, and that's where we're going to focus today's class on how to prepare a plan. And it starts with the client data worksheet, which is a 3-page questionnaire that you could use as a guide to help interview clients before you prepare a plan. You'll see the first page starts with the usual contact information, some home and lifestyle questions, and jumps into potential employment benefits that a client gets from an outside employer. The second page is dedicated entirely to the client's business activities. The third page is dedicated to their investment activities. And you'll see that it's mostly a series of check-the-box questions, yeses and nos. It's not really about the numbers. There are some numbers that you can add, and there are uses for those numbers. We'll discuss them as we go through the presentation today. But the real premise here is that clients are not nearly as interested in the numbers as they are in the concepts and strategies that you can show them. So the questionnaire is designed to identify those concepts and strategies that you should be presenting to the client to delight them with your efforts to help save them taxes. We strongly do not recommend that you use the data questionnaire as a turnaround document. In other words, we don't recommend that you send it to the client, have them fill out, and send back. You lose a lot of opportunity if you don't have the chance to quiz the clients on these questions and go into more detail where the client says yes. We also don't want the client to perceive that the plan is simply a black box where they check some boxes, you put the boxes into the computer, and out comes a written report. Remember, we learned in TCU 101 that ultimately we don't want the client to perceive the value as coming from the plan itself. We want the client to perceive the value as coming from your delivery of the plan. The more the client sees your fingerprints all over the process, the more the client's going to be impressed with your value and what you bring to the process. All right. Once you have filled out that questionnaire, you're going to discover it's time to enter it into the system. You can add a new client from the Add a Client button, or you can always make changes to an existing client. And what we're going to do today, for the sake of brevity in this presentation, is we're going to take one of the sample clients, a business owner. And that business owner is Mr. Howard Cunningham from Clinton Drive in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we can't say what his email address was from the show Happy Days, but you'll probably recognize the information here. So the first screen is the client contact information, and you will discover as we go through these screens that they are designed to mimic the data entry on the questionnaire. We want this process to be as easy as possible. So you're going to enter the contact information for Howard Cunningham, the display name, the address, and you're going to work your way across the top of the screen. So once you finish the contact information, it's time for the family screen. So here's where you'll be able to enter the members of the family. So the first one is Howard Cunningham. We're giving him a date of birth of January 1st, 1960. The specific date of birth is not that important, but the year is important for family members. Many of the modules will depend on how old somebody is, whether we want to include modules on Social Security in the plan, for example, whether we want to include modules on hiring children, and the important trigger for these modules is the year in which someone is born. So we enter Howard Cunningham. We enter Marion Cunningham, his wife, Richie and Joni, and their other dependent, Arthur Fonzarelli. We're going to check the filing status here, and in the Cunningham's case, it's married filing jointly. One little quirk of the system you should be aware of is that the system will not let you click married filing jointly or married filing separately until you have entered both spouses in the client's family box. We're going to ask you if they own or rent their primary home and some specific lifestyle questions. Then here we're going to ask some specific numbers, current income and tax. These are optional, but if you include these numbers, the system will include the ballpark savings estimates. And we will talk in a little bit about the new estimates feature in TaxCoach that lets you go into a little more detail. So, current income and tax, $120,000 AGI, $90,000 taxable income, and fortunately, living in the 1950s, the Cunninghams are not subject to the dreaded alternative minimum tax. The employment section here is going to be blank because Howard is self-employed and Marion doesn't work. So the real action for the Cunninghams is going to come in the business section. So we've got a business entered. You can add as many businesses as you like. It's the Happy Days Hardware Company. So what do we know about this business? Well, we're assuming that Howard owns 100% of the business. Marion owns none of the business. The business's net income is $100,000. The business does own a little bit of capital equipment. It occupies real estate. There is no home office. And Howard intends to leave the business to his son, Richie. He's currently taxed as a proprietorship. There is group health insurance and currently a simple IRA among the benefit plans. And salaries and employees, it's a proprietorship, so Howard doesn't take any salary or get guaranteed payments. He does not have Marion on the payroll. And we'll give him $100,000 in non-family payroll. The system will automatically save your entries when you move on to the next screen. However, there is a save button if you'd like to make sure that the system saves your entries while you're in the middle of a screen. Finally, we've got the investment information section, and we understand from the previous screen there are some IRA or qualified retirement plan assets. Howard's got some taxable assets as well. He does not own investment real estate. Once all of that information is entered, you get to the report screen. And this is where we're going to make selections on which modules to include in the actual plan. Now, TaxCoach has what we like to call an artificial intelligence that will guide you to these modules. What it is really is just an elaborate decision tree. It's a series of if-then statements. If the client owns a business 18 years old, consider hiring a child. If the client has no retirement plan checked, we'll check some retirement plan alternatives to show to the client. If the client's income is high enough, we may suggest an advanced strategy like a closely held insurance company. And the system will give us the modules. You will notice in the top of the left-hand column, there's a dashboard with 3 alternatives, and the arrow will remind you where you are on this dashboard. So the default is TaxCoach's picks. But you can make changes. You can add or delete as many of the modules as you like. For example, the last tax plan I did for an actual client simply focused on retirement plan alternatives. So we simply took the appropriate retirement plan considerations, bundled them up into about a 6 or 7 page plan, and that was it. So if you decide, for example, I'll just delete the charitable strategies and save, you'll now see that the dashboard shows that we have your picks for modules. And finally, if the client data changes, but you have not made any changes to the module selection, it will glow red to alert you about that. If you want to be ambitious, you can select all of the modules, and if that's too many modules, you can clear all the modules. So we'll go ahead and we'll refresh TaxCoach's suggestions. Finally, we have an estimates feature that will let you calculate some specific savings estimates for your client. Let's take a look in the business section. We know that Howard is operating the hardware store as a sole proprietorship. He's currently making $100,000. Well, my first thought when I see somebody making 6 figures in a sole proprietorship is, should we be looking at an S corporation? And as it turns out, the system does recommend that we present the S corporation module. So if I want to calculate, there are 2 different ways that we can set up the savings estimates. I can calculate them myself, and I can drop them into the box here. So you'll see in the upper left-hand corner, we have a box called Savings for Mr. and Mrs. Howard Cunningham. We currently have $0 in savings because we haven't used anything from this feature. So I can estimate that we're going to save $4,000. And you'll see I have the override dollar amount, and it carries up to the amount here in the summary. However, if I want to calculate a specific savings, I can ask the system to do that for me. So we know that Howard is paying self-employment tax on $100,000 worth of income. We can go to his tax return, or we can do our own calculation, and we can find that that works out to about $14,153 in self-employment tax. We can then enter another variable, the salary. What's the salary that Howard would draw if his primary business were converted to an S corporation? And let's just say, for the sake of argument, that's $50,000. The system calculates that if we go from a proprietorship paying $15,153 a year in self-employment tax to a corporation with a salary of $50,000, that Howard will save $7,503 in employment tax. And we see that $7,503 carry forward to the total at the top of the page. Now, if we go to an S corporation, Howard's not going to be able to save as much money in his simple IRA, so maybe we're going to create a couple of $1,000s in extra savings by moving to a 401k plan. Now we go to the top in the total savings and we see $9,503 in taxes. So you can see how that works. So once we're done with the estimates, we can go back to the report section. Now it's time to actually print out a report. We're going to generate the report, and we use the Generate Report button. It will create the plan in PDF, and it's going to take a few seconds. What's happening behind the scenes while you're waiting here is the system is compiling all of the modules into a single report in raw HTML. It is then rendering the raw HTML and printing it into a PDF document. While you wait, it's going to give you little tidbits from the TaxCoach method. You'll be able to continue to the report, and here we are. We have a 54-page report, personal tax plan prepared for Mr. and Mrs. Howard Cunningham. You can upload your firm's logo to the report. It will include your contact information. You'll have a nice table of contents should you choose to include it. You'll have modules. You'll have the client's name and your name at the bottom of every module. You'll have as many pages as you want to include in the plan. Finally, the last page will be about your tax planner. This is important. Don't take this for granted. You really do want to enter your information for the system to include it into your plan. So you can upload your photo, you can upload your firm's logo, and you can upload a bio sketch which emphasizes your value to your clients. You can then print the report. You can save the report as a PDF onto your own hard drive. You can do whatever you want with the report. Now, the main report is not customizable. You don't get to go in and make changes to the specific module text. We initially considered including that capability when we created the TaxCoach system, but it renders the reports in HTML format, and any kind of editorial changes could disrupt that HTML formatting, cause a module to spill over into more than one page, and that problem would cascade through the rest of the report. However, there is a way that you can generate an editable, customizable version of the plan, and that is the summary plan. So the summary plan is going to give you about a 2-sentence bullet point for each of the strategies. You can generate that in PDF format, or you can generate that in a rich text format. It's editable in whatever word processor you're using. You can also check to include the module page numbers in the summary report or not include them. And we'll talk in a minute about why you might not want to include them. So the process for generating a summary report is much quicker because we're just throwing it up in rich text format. We don't have to render it in HTML and print it in PDF. And it will give you a downloadable document. And here we go. So we have the introduction, and as I said, it's usually 2 sentences for each module. We're not giving away the store on the modules. We're not giving away a lot of free information here. So in your business, we said that we were going to consider an S corporation for Howard Cunningham. So what does the bullet point say? It says, consider establishing an S corporation. This may help limit self-employment tax and lower your risk of audit. Well, we're not really giving away the store there. We're not giving away, we're identifying a concept. We're saying consider establishing an S corporation. We don't know if we're going to make that a final recommendation. We do have some estimated savings. Remember that $7,503 we calculated? Here it is. in the summary report for you. Estimated savings, $7,503 based on a stated salary of $50,000. So we give a little bit of information, but we can customize this as much as we want. Remember, it's a Word document. So we say, consider establishing an S corporation for Happy Days Hardware Company. This may help limit self-employment tax, which currently stands at $14,153, and lower your risk of audit. So you can take this basic document, you can add as much detail to it as you like. You can customize it for the client, for the strategy, and you can use this really as a summary of the plan. I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that you can include the module page numbers here or not. We often recommend that you do a summary plan document for someone before you even get their buy-in for an actual plan. This is especially helpful if you've picked up a new tax preparation client without doing a plan for them. You finish their return, you discover some missed opportunities, some things that they should be doing to save money on taxes. After April 15th is a great time of year to prepare a summary plan, send it out to the client and say, hey, I noticed that you've missed some opportunities to save money on your taxes. Here's the kind of planning that we should sit down and do before your next quarterly estimate is due to see if we can save money on this year's tax and on taxes going forward. If they see that there's a page number of a module attached to this summary plan, they might wonder just how little or how much work went into preparing the summary plan for them. All right. And that really is all you need to know to create a tax plan for a client. I know you were expecting a 60-minute class, and I'll be here for as long as anyone has questions, but this really is a very easy process. We designed TaxCoach from the start to be something that you could use with a client even before you actually prepared a tax return for them. This isn't the sort of software that sits on top of a tax return or that requires you to import a lot of numbers from an existing tax return to present these concepts and strategies. When it's time to sit down and prepare, and deliver the return, usually you're going to have a fairly detailed document, and you're probably going to have more concepts and strategies to present than the client is going to have the stomach for. So what I recommend you do is you identify the top 3 or 4 or 5 strategies, the ones that are going to give the client the most immediate bang for their buck. Focus on those strategies in your narrative in the summary plan report. In Howard's case, the first one might be S Corporation, the second one might be hiring Richie and Joni, the third one might be a medical expense reimbursement plan. If he decides not to do the S Corporation, he might consider hiring Marion and paying a medical expense reimbursement plan through her. He might also consider buying the building where he's renting the space for his hardware store. So those might be the strategies that you present. And it's going to take 20 minutes to walk Howard through the S Corporation, exactly what it is, what he has to do to set it up, what he has to do to maintain it, and what your role is going to be in maintaining it. It's going to take a few minutes to explain the ins and outs of hiring Richie and Joni to work for the store. It'll take a few minutes to explain the medical expense reimbursement plan and how that might work with a hire your spouse scenario. Now, at the end of that conversation, you're going to have spent 45 minutes or an hour presenting some pretty valuable stuff, but you really aren't going to have time to present every single concept. And if you really do try to cram it all down the client's throat, they're going to go on overload. After a few strategies, they really are going to have had enough. So you can come back a couple months later after you've implemented the S corporation, maybe make sure that Howard is accounting properly for the wages that he's paying Richie and Joni. You can do progress meetings. Maybe in 6 months you come back and say, okay, here are 3 or 4 more strategies that we didn't get to the first time around, and present those strategies. You're not going to be able to give all of this information to the client at one time. But remember, ultimately, we don't want the client to perceive the value as coming from the plan itself. We want the client to perceive the plan as coming from your delivery of the plan. So if the client calls with a question, you don't ever want to tell the client, go look it up on the S Corporation page of your plan. You want to answer the client for the question in a way that establishes your value as a trusted advisor. All right. I want to open this up to questions, and let's see what you can come up with. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the recording for the archive version. So thank you for joining us for this recorded TaxCoach University class. Remember, you can access all of the TCU classes on the TCU archive section of the TaxCoach website. And for questions that you have, questions that come out of this class, join us on a Wednesday member call-in where you'll have the opportunity to pose questions to me and to the entire TaxCoach community. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.